the human drama is part of it, and the shots of Raheem Sterling, who, and I'm not sure it's his natural game to be dilly-dallying on the ball and trying to be too clever and play down the clock, loses the ball and then hands on his head. The shot we have is from behind, and Muller pulls the chance wide, and he just collapses almost in complete relief. His entire life flashed before him. Yeah,
absolutely. And then that's just the way that this is. I mean, the two games we had last night were just absolutely fabulous in many, many different ways that we all know and loved and watch. And tonight was always going to be just a strange one, because England and Germany obviously have this history for many different reasons, not just as footballers, everybody knows, but and the English as well always seem to have a problem in beating the Germans. But they've done well tonight. They played extremely well. But I would have to say to you, this is by far and away the most average German team I've seen for a while. Yes, it's got a sprinkling of some very good players, but it's also got quite a few ordinary players as well in there. And they didn't really play with masses of conviction. They got on the ball first 10 or 15 minutes, and we all thought, here we go. But it just never, ever really materialised. And I think the other thing as well, when you know the manager's going to go, if obviously you lose that game, I don't ever think it's quite the same thing. I never understand why football associations let managers carry on when they announce that they're going to retire. I think you just say, pay them off or whatever, and shake their hands, have a party and say thanks very much, get the new man in.
Yeah.
But obviously Germany didn't want to do that.
The lame duck syndrome.
Yeah.
In that first 10, 15 minutes where Germany maybe had their most consistent spell of dominance, or certainly being on top, it was notable they went through the centre of England pretty easily. There was the Werner chance you mentioned, and then there was early on Declan Rice almost had to professionally take someone down who was going through as well. So that was kind of striking, three centre backs and the two boys pretty defensively minded, and still Havertz and Muller found some gaps there and went through them pretty quickly.
They did, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a breakaway as such, but it was where Germany came out with the ball, and I think they suddenly realised, their forward players, and one thing about them, they're both rapid. They were there and they were gone. So, they rode the luck, which is, it happens. I thought for a moment that Rice, if he caught him really properly, he might have got sent off. In the end, it was, in inverted commas, a good sort of tackle. But look, they've ridden over it, so it'll be a worry, I suppose. But then, are they going to play a team in the next round who are going to do that to them? I mean, we don't know, because it's knockout football. So what is it, Sweden or who is it? They play Sweden or Ukraine, isn't it?
Ukraine. I've given up predicting things after last night, which I'll ask you about in a second. To be fair to England, they were then pretty much on top rest of that first half. Where are you on Harry Kane? He was very much the focus of the BBC halftime conversation. Shearer felt his movement was no good. Klinsmann was making an interesting point. He was saying Kane should come deep and play himself into the game. He does it at Spurs to feel more alive, was kind of the phrase he used. And I don't know, did we see a bit more of that from Kane in the second half? Where are you on Harry Kane's form at the moment?
Well, the other week when it started and everyone was on about him, all I ever said was that, get him some chances, get people up and around him. And Grealish came on, makes a difference. Sterling as well did extremely well. But Harry Kane, if you watch him at Tottenham, as we all do, and we all rave about him, he has Son in and around him, and he drops off and Son goes in behind him, vice versa. And he's got loads of movement. But I think one of the problems is for him really was the ball from kind of back, middle to the front for England generally comes very, very slowly, unless Pickford's pinged a 70-yarder. So it's very, very difficult for him. He's virtually up there on his own, because if it's Sterling on one side, Foden on the other, or Grealish, they actually sit quite deep. And he's forever surrounded by 2, 3, sometimes even 4 players. So it's difficult, but you saw him as soon as the ball came in the box, as soon as Grealish got on him, his movement was fab, and bang, he just didn't miss. No. And it's a bit like, feed the dog, he's hungry, just feed him.
He'll score. And even the header, I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautifully dispatched. Look, he was always going to score it, but you saw kind of the finisher in him. On Southgate, so, and how he set the team up, because I saw, and look, Twitter's only a reflection of I don't know what, but the general reaction from even the football fraternity, the various journalists who cover England week in, week out, was this was a very conservative selection, cowardice almost. You know, these kind of words were coming in. The narrative was being shaped. They were sharpening knives if things didn't work out in advance.
British press.
Yeah. So look, Foden, Grealish, Mount, maybe Rashford to a lesser extent, all left out. But I suspect now Southgate will turn around and say, Phillips and Rice, I knew they'd take care of those two in midfield and largely did okay. And Shaw and Trippier handled, you know, Gosens been one of the players of the tournament, and Kimmich's a really good player, and you have Shaw putting in a cross for the crucial goal. So actually, he may well make an argument that unlike, say, the Croatia game where the fullbacks didn't cross the halfway line, perversely, it may not be the names of Mount or Grealish or Foden starting, but Trippier and Shaw in particular are actually attacking the game a bit more now, and in some ways it I don't want to say it was out and out attacking, but it certainly wasn't like super conservative either, the way they played today.
No, and I think that the idea is they kind of with Rice and Phillips, I think, you know, back three, back five today, whatever you wanted to call it, they have this kind of, they want to build this base in the game where it's very, very difficult for the opposition to break down. And always in football, no matter how bad a team you are, you'll get opportunities and you'll get spells in the game where you will have the ball. And it seems very much, it's like what happens is the opposition do not score. And then eventually, you know, I think what England do is that they kind of wear teams down. And they make good substitutions. I mean, Grealish comes on. That would seem to be the favoured thing at the moment. He comes on, has a little bit of room, goes past fullbacks, etc., holds the ball up, gets your fouls, etc. And I think they did say, didn't they, that is it Holland, his assistant, Steve Holland, I think it is, and Southgate, they'd studied for months teams who'd won these competitions, not necessarily outstanding teams that had won, but maybe teams that were a little bit unfancied, like a Greece. Remember Greece winning? I think that was in Portugal, I think, wasn't it? And one or two others like that. And they decided definitely that in the first few rounds, certainly league basis, they would be very cautious and very, very difficult to beat. And that was all about not conceding and thinking at the business end, even if there was only probably maybe three players at the business end. So, you know, Sterling, Kane, Foden in the first game, they would eventually fashion chances that would get them chances to score, etc. And that's exactly the way that they've been. As to the next game, who knows? And
do you like that logic? Do you think that's fair enough, or is it reductive and conservative and a little, you know, they could be doing a whole lot more?
Well, England in the World Cup, I mean, they got through to the semi-finals. To be honest with you, they didn't beat anyone.
No,
not a good side. They did not beat a good side, and I'm not being bitter about that. They just didn't. And as soon as they played a good side, i.e. Belgium or Croatia, they got beat. But they got the nation with them, which I think is very, very important. And I think Gareth Southgate is just a really, really nice guy. What you see is what you get. And I think he's always going to get a little bit longer in the job. And this was always going to be their best chance because they're at home, aren't they? I know.
Yeah.
Next leg, I don't know if they're away somewhere. I'm not sure where they go. But they're definitely away. And then they come back, and I think arguably they can be at home for the last two games. And by the way, last game Wembley can be full as well. But that's just the way that they've been, and nobody can argue with it. And the whole thing is, everybody has an opinion about England. In England, your Milkman, your Winderclear, they've all got an opinion. And you know, in these days where everybody knows about tactics because it's, you know, you see all the programs, the technical programs all about tactics and, you know, low blocks and high blocks and absolutely everything, 3 at the back, 2 at the back, all those kind of stuff. So everybody's got even more of an opinion than they've ever had before because they've got a lot more knowledge. So that's probably doesn't help in his favour. But he's just that way. No, this is the way that were going to be. And I think the FA said the other day that even if he fails, in inverted commas, in this competition, he will not lose his job.
Well,
so
I think what you have to say in his favour, and look, it's early days to know if Gareth Southgate's going to be regarded as a great manager in 20 years or not, but he's not afraid to make decisions which, if England lose the game, will be jumped upon, i.e. Trippier in the first game or the change in formation today. Like, he would have known how easy it would have been for the media at large and the fans at large to point to Mount or to point to Grealish or whatever, and maybe a lesser, more insecure manager doesn't play Trippier in the first game, even though he has a hunch it might be the right thing to do. So that's what I sort of admire about Southgate, is that he's making decisions which will be seized upon, and he will know that, and he seems strong enough not to let that affect his thinking. Yeah,
and he knows exactly what he wants. And the other thing about it is we don't know the mental side of these players. I mean, obviously, he doesn't have them in terms of club football, so he doesn't have them every day of the week, 7 days a week, etc. But he will know that from the relatively small time he spends with them, what they're like. And the Trippier thing, he just said, in the first game against Croatia, playing him at left back, I absolutely trust him.
Yeah.
And he can come in and play with his right foot, so it's not an issue. I absolutely trust him. And I mean, if you're sending players out at this level and you can trust every single one of them, then you've got a chance. And if they know that you trust them, they will play for you. I mean, they will play for you anyway, but they will when push comes to shove, they will really play for you. So I think he's just got this thing with all of them, and they really like him. Still relatively young. He was a good player, and he was technically a good player as well. And himself and Steve Holland, they've worked extremely hard with everything they've done. And as I said to you before, that they've studied everything. But I think, you know what, there will be more pressure on them in the next game than there will have been on today.
Well, they have to make the final now. Suddenly, 0-0 at 70 minutes today is tight and tense and understandable. 0-0 at 70 minutes in the next game is going to be murmurs from the crowd and come on, why haven't we scored? And that's the difference. They don't seem like great front runners. They don't seem like a team who'll be great at chasing a game. They still haven't been 1-0 down yet, for instance. No, exactly. Well, not conceded a goal. So, that's great. And I mean, if you're in that 3, 4 or 5... And obviously Maguire's now in to stay with Stones. He was good, by the way, Maguire, wasn't he? Oh, very good. And he came out with the ball as well. Yeah. I mean, John Stones has always been a very, very good player. He was technically gifted on the ball, but wasn't a particularly good defender. He would kind of lose concentration at times. But now he's become a really good defender. They're difficult to break down, mind you were saying that, and obviously 2 or 3 times the Germans went straight through the middle, which you will get. You will always get chances like that. But if you're going to play them, whoever you are, Sweden or the Ukraine at the weekend, Saturday I think it is, regardless of how England play, it will be tough because they run, they chase, they get behind the ball, they tackle, and they hustle, and it's a very, very difficult team to play against at the moment. So, because I want to ask you about France, so what are we saying here about England? Because it seems like after every game we're still trying to figure out if they're any good or not. Are we saying they're going to win this thing? They're going to get to a final? Do you rate them? Do you think there's still something missing? I'm not going to tell you they're going to win this thing. Listen, they quite possibly could, and I would just say to them, if they win this, they will have won it by stealth. But there's nothing wrong with that. Sure. We would all accept that, and we know they've got really, really talented players. I mean, the Sancho and the Bellinghams have hardly featured at all, and 1 or 2 more who are outstanding players. But he just likes players who he can rely on. And then if needs be, 10, 15 minutes from the end, he wants something a little bit different to kind of unlock the door. Then you might start to see 1 or 2 of these guys come on. But if you don't see it, it means that they're still going through this tournament, and they work extremely hard. I've not seen any of the figures or the stats, but as I said to you before, you'd hate to play against them because they're all over you. Were you confident in Mbappe as he walked up to the penalty spot last night? No, I thought he was awful in the game. Yeah, strange. Yeah, I really... He looked like a lad who'd lost his confidence. We know he's an absolutely fabulous player, but he was taking too many touches. He was dribbling to when he should have passed.
and everything like that. No, I so wasn't. I just said to my better half, I think he might miss this.
Yeah.
She wasn't interested, obviously, but yeah, it just. But you know what? The whole thing about that game for me was that I think Deschamps got it absolutely, totally right. They got to 3-1, didn't they? And because the French were playing so well, I think Deschamps thinks, oh, let's go and get another one. You know, let's show them how brilliant we are. Pogba's goal, all that kind of stuff. There was a bit of kind of crooning and all that kind of stuff. Instead of saying, you know what, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring on an extra defender. They might poo-poo me, it doesn't matter, and I'll bring off, you know, one or two of the front men, because obviously we're now in the next round. I just think they got that totally wrong. And by the way, as well, defensively, they were hopeless. They were absolutely hopeless. As soon as Switzerland went at them, well, in fact, all the game, every time Switzerland went at them, they looked extremely ropey.
Yeah, it was just a weird game as well. It was like they turned it on, France, for half an hour when they really needed to, and they were devastating for that 25 minutes. The goals were amazing, and then turned it right back off again. Well,
but why not turn it on from minute one?
Well, what's the answer to that?
Well, I'm sorry, well, it comes from the manager, and obviously comes from one or two of the players a little bit, but I'm not sure how Deschamps manages them, whether he says, you know, to all of them, you're absolutely brilliant, you're fantastic, you're this, that, the other, or not. But I wouldn't have thought so, because I saw that the video from when France won the World Cup in Paris, and he made that. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
That speech at half-time, and it was like, wow.
And all the players are fired up. I mean, Pogba's a man possessed behind the scenes. They're all really into it. So that's why they've been average-ish this whole tournament, and then last night, it's hard to make sense of last night. Well,
it was, and they were just... It wasn't... You know, nobody actually looked like they were playing at 100%. They were cruising through it, and it's a really, really difficult one, because I'm pretty sure there's an unbelievable lot of egos in that team. We're all certain that it is.
Yeah.
But even so, at some stage, those with egos, if you say to them at half-time, you know what, we could go out of this competition if you lot don't pull your finger out, and you know, we'll be the laughing stock of France.
Yeah, but do you know? Sorry, I have a thought there. Yeah, so I've no doubt that is what was said at half-time, and often. Very, very good teams, when they start off a game badly, one of the hardest things to do is to change the momentum and to get back into it.
Joe, to do, ever.
This French team are so bloody talented and good that they start off badly and they still manage to turn it around. Not just turn it around, 3-1 up, Pogba's dancing, we're home and hosed, and then they spit it up again. That's what's like unforgivable.
Well, and could have been 2-0 if your man scores a penalty.
Sure.
You know, so yeah, it really seriously is. It must just be egos in the team, because look, Kante was, you know, he works unbelievably hard, so it's not him. And in fairness to Pogba works hard, but then you look at one or two of the other players, and they kind of stroll a little bit, and it's a sort of, well, I'll do better next time, and I don't really get that. You know, I was fortunate enough to play in a team which was, oh my God, if they thought that you weren't pulling it out, they'd just pull you off after 10 minutes. And I don't get the mentality. And people say, oh well, you know, they're super rich and they're all superstars and all that kind of stuff. But I tell you what, you still want to win stuff. And I just thought the French had a really, really good opportunity to win this competition, like a lot of other people, and they just threw it away for me.
I'm just seeing before you go, Rafa Benitez, Sky Sports confirming, will be announced as the Everton manager. 3-year deal is what they're looking at. So look, here's the very unfair version of Benitez. The football won't be great, and he's a manager who tactically very shrewd and all that, but the football won't be great, and it's not like his career is in an upward trajectory. So I don't know how excited Everton fans would be about this. What's your sense of Benitez at 61, 3-year deal here at Everton?
Well, let me say this. I think this is like any other manager that goes to a club generally, although there's a bit more hype. But if he wins the first 6 games, he's a genius, and everybody will have forgot about it. I mean, he's everything to the nth degree. I told you the story about Stevie G with him, didn't I?
Go on.
When Stephen was going away to play for England, and Rafa had been there a few years at Liverpool, obviously, and as you know, there were many times where Steven Gerrard carried that team. He was unbelievable. And Liverpool had just won at home in the league. Stevie G was about to go away for international duty, and he was called down to Benitez's office after the game. And he got in there, and Stevie G says, I was expecting you, well done today, make sure you don't get injured, all that kind of stuff. And he said, while you're away and you've got some time to yourself, look at this. Benitez said, and it was a DVD. Do you know what it was?
Go on.
It was a DVD of all his mistakes, which you kind of go. And I said to Stephen, what did you say? I said, I never said anything to him. He said, because I didn't see it then. But when I got it and I saw it, he just said to myself, Rafa, that's how he was. You could be absolutely sensational, but you could have just done something. You could have just gone back and nicked a corner from that fella. And I mean, that's the way that he is. And there's one thing about him is that he'll get lots of money to spend at Everton because, I mean, they spent $500 million and they've wasted most of it. But he really will get that chance to spend money. So we'll see.
Ironically, I'd love to talk to Benitez. Maybe he's like that with all the players. I suspect he probably was. But it seems, whatever way he read Gerrard was pretty keen to get some approval from Benitez. So maybe it worked out just fine. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they had a great relationship, but I think it was a classic old boot room thing, which was when you kept winning and you're like going to win leagues and cups and all that kind of stuff. The boot room would knock you down because all the newspapers and the supporters were calling you brilliant, you were geniuses, and you could do absolutely everything, invade the moon, the whole kind of thing. And that was the way that the club was. And I think Benitez liked that. He liked that kind of, you might have beaten this team 5-0 at the weekend, but by the way, my kids could have played against you and done just as well. So I think that's how Rafa is. That's his DNA, basically.
Listen, great having you on. So England to win this whole thing without conceding a goal, and we'll still be wondering if they're any good at the end of it. That's about what we're saying here.
I'm emigrating if that's happening.
Mark Lawrenson, thanks so much. Cheers.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating at least 100,000 to Irish football via England goals this summer. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7